Welcome back. This week in pro football, Pat Callahan joining you here, week 17 in the National Football League here on JAKIB Sports. Don't forget, give me a follow on X at TWIPF Pat. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports. And all of you know this man, who I'm proud to have back on the show. That's a Hall of Famer himself and a longtime member of the Hall of Fame committee, the author of Finished Business and the Eagles Encyclopedia. That's Ray Didinger. Ray, how are you today?
Hello, Pat. How are you doing?
All right. Thank you very much for joining me, Ray. I can't stress enough to everybody to go buy that book, Finished Business. It's really a wonderful read throughout Ray's career, and so many interesting moments and stories you have to tell way back in the days of the Bolton and the Inquirer. The Daily News, and of course your Comcast days. But I guess that was a labor of love doing that book, huh?
Oh yeah, it was. It really was. It probably would have never been written, Pat, if the Eagles hadn't won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The Temple University Press, who published it, had talked to me a couple years earlier about doing my memoirs because I was coming up on 50 years. And, I tried it. I sat down and I spent, a couple months doing outlines and writing sample chapters. And I just didn't feel it, and I called them back and said, I don't think it's going, I'm just not feeling it. I said, okay, no problem. But, when 2017 came along and the Eagles went on and won the Super Bowl in that amazing season and that amazing game, it was actually flying back from Minneapolis that the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I think we have a book now.
Yeah, all right.
Because I had covered the two Flyers Stanley Cups, I had covered the two Phillies World Series, I had covered the Sixers run to the championship with Doc and Moses. The one thing that was missing was the big one, was the Eagles winning a Super Bowl. And when that happened, I just kind of felt like that completed the picture. That sort of represented finished business. So that's really kind of how the book came about.
So many great anecdotes in the book. I found very interesting, and I think everyone else would too, your takes on those the great Phillies teams of the 70s that never got it done until Pete Rose showed up. Right. And also I did not know I didn't remember the big story you did on pro wrestling and the fact that you could have ended up like John Stossel if not for a security guard. That's a great read too. So everybody check that out. It's a great book. All right, Ray, let me get back now to the present. Unfortunately, we have to spend time there. And I was talking with Sal Palantonio earlier in the show, and I wanted to get your take on this. I posit to Sal that what the Eagles need is a blowout. They didn't get it last week against the Giants, but I think it could cure a lot of those locker room and sideline ills if they could just come out with a 37-10 win over Arizona. What is your take on that?
It would help. It would help. I think it would put everybody's mind at ease. Right. The coaches, the players, management, the front office, and maybe most of all the fans. I think everybody kind of needs that. Yeah. But, one of the things about this team that I find the most surprising and perhaps the most troubling is that we're 15 games in now, and we haven't yet seen them play a 60-minute game. There is a one game, and we're now very much into the home stretch of the season. Right. And we haven't had one game where you could say that for 4 quarters they went out and owned the game. They're 11-4, which on paper looks pretty good, and it's probably going to be good enough to win the division. It's certainly going to get you to the playoffs. But it has been a very choppy, sort of lurchy kind of 11-4, where, they've had close calls against a lot of teams that they should have blown away, a really ugly loss to the Jets, and a lot of games that just kind of left you walking away saying, yeah, they won, but you're kind of scratching your head. So, if they could come out on Sunday and just bury the Cardinals, which they could, and you might say they probably should, I don't know that it would say, oh boy, everything's great now. They're right there. They're ready for the playoffs, because there still are going to be issues, regardless of what the score is on Sunday. There's still going to be things moving forward that are less than perfect with this team. But I think a nice big blowout, game's over at halftime kind of night is something that I think everybody would welcome.
Right. A few coaches have been as successful as Nick Sirianni has been out of the box. A Super Bowl appearance in just his second year, and they're poised to make, I would hope, a deep playoff run again in his third year. And yet his sideline demeanor is unique. It sometimes seems as if he's, it's like a pickup football game. The way sometimes he seems to lose his temper rather frequently, and sometimes with his own players. What does Nick Sirianni perhaps need to do different, if anything, to also help get this team out of what you just described as this season-long malaise?
Yeah, he has shown that this year. Certainly, it was certainly very much in evidence in the last game. I mean, just some of what we saw in that final couple of minutes in the Giants game, with him clearly barking at Hassan Reddick and then barking at the linebacker coach, and then Devontae Smith,
right?
Who kind of was just walking in like the accidental tourist, and he's winding up getting chewed out. I mean, Nick was, he was very edgy there, and I kind of understand it because I think he's feeling stressed, and I'm sure all the stuff that we've talked about, the areas where, this team has not been that good this year. And nobody's going to wear that more than the head coaches because they're the guys that are living it 24/7. And I think he feels like, this team and this season has not been what he thought it was going to be. And the other night, I think just the frustration, I don't want to say got the better of him, but the frustration, I think, was more visible to the fans and the TV audience than it had been at that point. But I think it's been a very stressful year for everybody down there, right? Because you're coming off the Super Bowl, you're coming off a very bitter Super Bowl loss.
Right.
You're coming into this year with the hope and a lot of people saying this is the best team in the NFL, best roster in the NFL. Heck, I said that. And almost from week one, even though they've been winning games, they haven't shown you that, right, what you thought they were going to be. I mean, dumb mistakes, turnovers, penalties, right, general sloppiness in all these games. And I think, at this point, Nick Sirianni has just had it up to here. And the other night, it just you kind of saw it boil over in a very public kind of way.
And I think, I think that concern too is that when the playoffs, obviously the opposition gets way higher, way tougher, and there's not going to be any room to offset those kind of mistakes that you're talking about.
No.
Ray, just a word about Jalen Hurts. We tend maybe to overanalyze Jalen Hurts. I don't know, but I had a dialogue with Sal about the fact that his 23 stats are almost identical to his 22 stats, and yet again, it seems as though his level of play is different. Is not quite as elevated as it was last year. Is there anything you think he needs to do different these last couple of weeks to get ready for a playoff run?
Well, he's clearly not where he was last year. I think that part of it is what we've all seen, which is that he's been playing with some sort of injury most of the year. Doesn't want to talk about it. Team doesn't want to talk about it, but he's been playing through something most of this year, which has affected him. But there are, he's still making some spectacular plays. I mean, that 3rd and 20 that he converted on Sunday was, every time, if you want to run that back and look at it, every time you look at it, it's an even more amazing throw that he was able to thread that needle in that spot and really kind of get this team's heart beating again. Because that game, even though the Giants are a terrible team, all of a sudden at that moment, that game was kind of teetering.
I know.
And that one play, that big play, he converts 3rd and 20 to Brown. They take it down, they score. Now all of a sudden the game's under control again. but that was a very, very big play and a very big moment, and he delivered it. He's still capable of that, but the problem is he's making a lot more mistakes than he did last year. Last year he made a lot of splash plays, both running it and throwing it. Statistically, he was one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. He and Mahomes were 1-2. And he still is capable of doing that. We've seen that. But the difference is last year he wasn't making big mistakes. This year he is. And right now, if you look at overall quarterback efficiency rating, he's 18th in the NFL right now.
That's true.
And I think most people would say coming into this year, where do you think Jalen Hurts is going to rank statistically among the NFL passers by week 15? And I think almost anybody would have put him in the top 5. Right. And he's not even close. So this has been, this hasn't been the year that I thought it was going to be for him, but I'm sure it's not the year that he envisioned either. But, Pat, you know how this all works. Once you get to the playoffs, you turn the page and it's all different.
I know.
And if he gets into the playoffs and he finds it again, and this team starts to click, they're going to have at least one home game, maybe 2. Who knows? Maybe they go into the playoffs and they find it and they go to the Super Bowl, and then everything that's happened up to this point becomes sort of meaningless. There's no guarantee that any of that's going to happen.
But certainly, San Francisco getting dusted as they were by the Ravens, it's the same situation. There was an air of invincibility that was starting to be built around the 49ers, and that they were the de facto NFC Super Bowl rep. And I think that took a big blow. If ever a team needed a slice of humble pie, it was the 49ers. They got it. And
they got it big time.
Right. So I think, again, if the Eagles could affect a blowout of Arizona, just a solid, no BS win, I think they could feel a lot better, and they could feel better now with San Francisco having come back to earth a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. The Eagles are going to win the division. I don't have any doubt they're going to win the next 2 games. Be 13-4 going into the playoffs.
I know 13-4 is good.
You'll have at least one home game, very likely 2. And so, Nick Sirianni has said it a lot, and he's right. He says, look, everything that we set out to accomplish at the start of the season is still right there in front of us. Yeah. We just have to stop making so many mistakes. We just have to work through a lot of stuff. My concern, I kind of thought all year, first part of the year, there were all of these things we're talking about now, penalties and turnovers and silly mistakes. And, and there was just a feeling that, okay, you got 2 new coordinators, you got some new personnel, teams have adjusted to some of the stuff you did last year. Okay, you're kind of just shaking this stuff out. But at some point, mid-season, certainly by Thanksgiving, you're going to start really clicking. You're going to see this team really start to put it together. And that really hasn't happened, and I kept thinking, well, they're going to get better. They're going to improve. And by the end of the year, by the time they get to the playoffs, they're really going to be playing championship level football. That's kind of what I expected. Now I'm at a point now where I'm not so sure that what we're seeing isn't what they are. I think after 15 games now, okay, the idea that a much better addition of these guys is there just waiting to be seen. Yeah. I'm not as confident of that as I was, say, a month ago. Yeah. I think right now this is kind of what they are. They're a team that has certain strengths for sure, but obviously have a lot of issues on the defense, and just need to play smarter and more consistent football than what they've shown us to this point.
All right. Very interesting. And I would want to wrap up with you on what I think is a very interesting game too. And since you and I are talking so much psychology here, Detroit goes to Dallas. Now, these are 2 teams, Ray, that are probably people are more skeptical about these 2 than they even are Philadelphia. Detroit, just to me, has not proven at all that they are going to go in there, even though they did it week 1 against Kansas City when they won that game. But even then now, that's been a little asterisk, that game, because the Chiefs obviously are struggling and have struggled a lot all season long. But I don't trust Detroit. And how can you trust Dallas? That 2 statement games the last 2 weeks, coming off a terrific run the Cowboys had, but they go to Buffalo, they get smacked. They go to Miami, and they gack that game up. What are your thoughts on, are either of these 2 teams, Ray, Detroit and Dallas, teams that the 49ers and Eagles really need to be concerned about come January?
Yeah, because they could run into one or both of them. You know, the thing with the Cowboys, Pat, it's pretty clear cut. They're 2 different teams, home and away. They are just 2 different animals. At home, they're really good. At home, they are really good. I mean, like 40 points a game good.
I know.
They just play with so much confidence. There's that building, that turf, that whole atmosphere there, it suits the way their team is built, a speed type of team.
Right.
It just suits them playing there. And they play with unbelievable confidence there. You take them on the road, especially you take them outside,
right?
Different ball game. Now, and the Lions, you know, the Lions, a lot of the Lions issue just revolves around the quarterback. I mean, Jared Goff can be really good, but he can also be really bad. And on days when he's just not seeing the field and he's making mistakes and turning the ball over, I mean, they could get beat by anybody.
I agree.
And so that's kind of what I see with them. And like this week, Detroit's got to go down there and play them in Dallas. I mean, especially Detroit coming off that big clincher. You know, they've spent this whole week celebrating. Right. So, I mean, I think they're going to go down to Dallas, and I think the Cowboys are going to smack them around.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah.
Now, if the Eagles run into either of those teams in the playoffs, they'll get to play them in Philadelphia.
Correct.
And that'll be a big advantage because the Cowboys haven't proven they can beat a good team on the road.
That's
already lost in this building once earlier this year. And for the Lions, you know, same thing. Could they come into Philadelphia in January and win a game? I'm not so sure.
Yeah. I think Dallas's best bet, Ray, and Sal will admonish me here because he doesn't like it when I look too far ahead here because of the name of the show and everything. But still, Dallas's best bet in the playoffs, Ray, is to go to Detroit because I think they're going to have trouble with Tampa. It's lining up right now. If they're the 5 seed, they're going to Tampa. And I think they're going to have trouble in that game. It's a natural grass field. The Cowboys, as you mentioned, they're built for speed. And Tampa could be a problem. And then besides that, it's Philadelphia or San Francisco, and Dallas is not built to win there in January. I think it could be another short playoff stint for the Cowboys in 2023, Ray. I don't know. I don't think they've proven anything yet.
Could very well be. And I was looking at, again, you never know quite how it's going to turn out, but I was doing the brackets, same as you were. And the thing I kept coming back with was I think the most likely scenario is Dallas is going to have to go to Tampa for that first game. And I think that will be a really tough game for them because the Buccaneers are playing good right now. Yeah. And Mayfield is playing. I mean, geez, to me, Baker Mayfield to me is the comeback player of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, I am just amazed at how well he's playing. So I could see the Cowboys walking into Tampa and the Bucs knocking them off. I think that is entirely possible.
I think I guarantee you that'll be that Saturday night primetime game will be Dallas at Tampa Bay. And I could see that. I see it too, right? I just don't know. The Cowboys, I like Dak Prescott. I think he's an earnest and he's a conscientious guy. I think he does his homework. But there's something in the psyche of that team that doesn't travel. And I think they're just not big enough. And they get San Francisco, they get Philadelphia. I don't think they can handle it. And but for the Eagles, Ray, I think as you mentioned, I mean, 13-4. There's nothing wrong with a 13-4 record, and they can still make this run. It's just going to be fascinating to see if they can psychologically get some demons out of that locker room in the next 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I know. I think one of the big things, Pat, and I keep thinking, and maybe this will be the week we'll see it. The defensive line has to really start playing better. Right. You know, I mean, you look what they've invested in that group, what they're paying that group, all those blue chip players. I mean, when we look at that defense, yeah, they got issues at linebacker. They certainly have issues in the secondary. But we thought that defensive line was going to win the battle week in and week out. We haven't seen it. And if this team is really going to make a postseason run, that defensive line is going to have to come up and play a lot bigger than it's been playing lately.
That's fair. 39 sacks this year versus 70 last year. You're exactly right about that. That D-line has to dominate for them to go deep. All right, the book is called Finished Business. At least that's the most recent one, the Eagles Encyclopedia. And, of course, I didn't get to talk to you. Eric Allen has made it to the final 15. Ray, I wanted to ask you this. You're a veteran Hall of Fame voter. I don't want you, but you're not a voter anymore, though. When you went to Comcast, that's right. But so let me posit this to you. Does this come down to Eric Allen versus Darren Woodson? Because with only 5 guys going, I think the likelihood of 2 of them being defensive backs is very, very low. Is that the way this is going to shake out, do you think?
Well, don't forget Rodney Harrison's in there, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Rodney Harrison's in there, too.
That makes it even tougher.
I don't think so, because the other 2 guys are safeties and Eric's a corner. So I think that gives him a little bit of an advantage. What he's going to be going up against is this is his first time as a finalist. And the other guys have been finalists before. So they've been in that conversation, in that room. Right. Listen, I got to give props to Paul Domowitch, who is the Philadelphia representative now. He's been fighting the good fight for Eric Allen all of these years to get him on the ballot. Kudos to Damo because he's finally done it. I absolutely think, to me, look, I saw his whole career here. And I felt like when I watched him play, I felt like I was watching a Hall of Famer. I mean, I thought he was that good. And that a guy could have played as long as he played, which is 14 years, at corner, never had to move to safety. He played 14 years at corner for 3 different teams, made all of those Pro Bowls. And you look at his numbers, his interceptions, his pick sixes, all of them. They're better than almost every other.
I agree. They are.
And in his era.
Meaning those that are already in the hole. Yep.
Yeah. I thought when I was a Hall of Fame voter, one of the things that you try to do when you're making the choices between this player and that player is I used to try to compare the guy we were evaluating to other guys who were already in the Hall of Fame. If that's the standard, how does he compare to that standard? Right. And if you look at, with Eric Allen's case, I would compare Eric Allen to Aeneas Williams, who played corner in that division at the same time. Right. I mean, they were contemporaries playing the same position. And Aeneas Williams has been in the Hall of Fame for probably 10 years now. And I have no problem with that. I would have voted for him too. Right. But if Aeneas Williams is in the Hall of Fame,
there you go.
There's absolutely no question in my mind that Eric Allen should be in there.
All right. Well, I wish him well, and I intend to try whatever social media noise I can make. I hope to do it. It's tough to get the 5. It's an impressive class. Reggie Wayne, Antonio Gates, Dwight Freeney, Willie Anderson. You got some serious guys in there. Rodney Harrison, Patrick Willis. A tough competition, but I certainly wish Eric well. And I look forward, Ray, when the final 5 comes out. Love to have you back on to talk about how it all went down and get your take on it. And
I'd be happy to. You know, it's everybody thinks it's great to be a Hall of Fame voter, and in some ways it was, because I did it for a long time and I did enjoy it. But it's so challenging to try and be the guy, and you're going to be telling. All those guys are great players. They're all great players. But as one of the voters, you have to say no to some great players, and that's hard to do. I always left that room feeling bad for the guys that we said, well, you had to say no to somebody. Yeah, but I always felt bad because every single one of those guys is a great player in his own right.
You're right. And you're talking about the final 25, certainly the final 15. You're saying no to 20 great NFL players just to get down to those 5. You're right. You know, exactly. So for everybody whose door is getting knocked on, there's 5 other guys whose door should be knocked on.
And you know what it means to those guys, and you know what it means to their families, and you know how many tears are shed when they don't knock on your door. Because I went through it with Tommy McDonald for 30 years. So it's really hard. But listen, Pat, the Hall of Fame is supposed to be for the elite of the elite, and that's it's supposed to be hard to get in there.
Right. Fair
but
enough.
I hope that Eric Allen can get across the threshold, because to me, I mean, he absolutely deserves it.
18 years with Allen. So, all right, Ray, thanks a lot for joining me. I held you a long time, and I appreciate it very much. I look forward to having you back. We get into the playoffs, and the stakes get a lot higher. It'd be fascinating to bring you back to talk about whoever the Eagles do end up matched up with, and I would enjoy the conversation very much. All right.
Absolutely, Pat. Anytime. Happy to do it. Always enjoy talking football with you.
All right, Ray. Thank you very much. The great Ray Didinger joining me. They're here on This Week in Pro Football, and always great having Ray. And what a couple of bookends that is. Sal Palantonio and then Ray Didinger. It doesn't get any better than that if you're a Philadelphia sports fan. And then there's even me too, for whatever that's worth. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching This Week in Pro Football this week. Thanks to Xander Krause for producing. I do think the Eagles are going to blow, but I say that every week. I think they're going to blow somebody out. But Arizona, I just can't believe the Cardinals aren't going to mail it in. I look for a big Eagle win this week. We'll take a look at that playoff seeding next week as we get into the final week of the NFL season. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you next week on This Week in Pro Football.